Coming from the girl who's gotten herself into and out of debt multiple times, I know a thing or two about the process. Have you decided that now is the time that you'll pay off your debt once and for all? Now, be honest with me. How many times have you decided that now is the time you'll pay off your debt once and for all? I've been there too. No judgment. You may have the best intentions when it comes to paying off your debt, but if you find yourself in the same position or trying to pay them off with no success, you could be making some costly mistakes. In this episode, I'm sharing some common mistakes to avoid when embarking on your debt payoff journey. Welcome to the City Girl Savings Podcast. I'm Rhea Reeves, founder and finance coach of City Girl Savings. I turned my life around with budgeting many years ago, and now I'm on a mission to help others do the same. I fully believe that you can enjoy your life on a budget, and this weekly show will focus on the intersection of money and the city girl lifestyle. Join me every week along with some special guests as I share my experiences, advice, and guidance on navigating life and money as an experience-loving millennial. Before we dive in, I want you to know this. You cannot change the past. You have to forgive yourself for the debt you've accumulated. And you have to understand why and how you got that debt to begin with. Whatever the reason for you being in debt or getting into debt, I should say, choose to move forward with grace. Forgive yourself. Forgive your past self. How are we going to move forward? Holding on to the negative feelings and the self-disappointment is only going to make the payoff process miserable, and this should actually be an exciting thing. So from this point forward, I want you to forgive yourself for the past mistakes you've made with your money and choose to move forward with grace. Okay, let's talk about the first mistake to avoid when paying off debt. And that mistake is failing to create a budget. If you know me, then you know that I will forever advocate for a budget. I truly believe a budget is the number one tool for financial success. And if you are serious about paying off your debt, you need to have a real understanding of your financial situation. Not having a budget before you create a debt repayment plan can be a very expensive mistake. So when you don't have a budget, not only do you fail to understand what you can reasonably afford to pay towards debt, and sidebar, I say reasonably because unrealistic debt payments only hurt your situation, but you fail to ensure that your living expenses are taken care of before paying your debt. Not to mention, what about the things you enjoy? Just because you have debt doesn't mean you can't have a weekly iced coffee or get your nails done. Remember, you've already forgiven yourself for getting into debt, so don't continue the punishment. Before you go deep with thinking about paying off your debt, create a budget that specifies your bills, your living expenses, your discretionary spending, and your savings. After all of those categories are accounted for, what are you left with? Whatever that leftover amount is, it should be used to pay down your debt. Now, if that number isn't much at all, see where you can cut back. And you may need to increase your income as well, but at least you know. Next mistake to avoid when paying off debt, aggressively paying down multiple debts at the same time. So once your budget is set, you'll want to have a debt repayment strategy. Trust me, it's a very important part of the debt payoff process. If you don't have a game plan for paying off your debts, you could spend so much more time and money than you need to on this journey. So let's assume you have $500 a month to put towards 5 different debts, and you decide to put $100 towards each of them. It's going to take you a long time to even have one of those debts paid off. Instead, a strategy like the snowball method can be game-changing. The snowball method is one of the most popular strategies for paying down debt, and it's the one I used myself and I help my clients with. So using this method means that you put all extra money towards one debt at a time, and it's usually the debt with the lowest balance, while paying the minimums on your other debts. So going back to the example, let's assume you have $500 a month to put towards 5 debts. You'll pay the minimums on 4 of the 5 debts, and then everything else goes towards the debt with the lowest balance. You will knock out that debt so much quicker than just putting $100 a month towards it. And then you can move on to the next one. Next mistake to avoid when paying off debt, continuing to accumulate debt. This may seem like a no-brainer, but another big mistake that people, and myself included in the past, make when paying off debt is continuing to use debt for purchases. This is where your budget comes in handy. If you're following your budget, there should be no need for you to use debt for purchases because everything should already be accounted for with your income. If for whatever reason you failed to budget a certain expense, just cut back your spending in another area to make sure you don't have to use debt. Now, I've had clients in the past try to justify using credit cards with zero balance for their normal spending so that they can get the rewards. But they're also focused on paying off credit cards with accumulating balances month over month. In theory, it sounds good because why not get rewards for normal spending? But in actuality, it leads to overspending on the cards that were paid in full every month. And that means less goes to the debts that actually need to be paid off. So proceed with caution if you're using rewards or credit cards with rewards, but 9 times out of 10, it's just not worth it. When you continue to use debt, when your goal is paying debt off, you're canceling out the progress you do make. Also, you're prolonging your debt-free life. No thanks. When you make the decision to pay off your debts once and for all, put all forms of credit away. You can no longer use them. You'll have to find another way to pay for things that aren't in your budget, and there are options. You can work overtime, start driving for Uber, start a blog, get a part-time job. Do what you need to, just don't accumulate debt. Are you tired of wondering which moves to make next with your money? Do you need some guidance on whether to pay off debt, save, or focus on something else? Get my free Money Moves packet today and start making impactful money moves instantly. Go to citygirlsavings.com/moves to download your Money Moves packet now. Another mistake to avoid when paying off debt is not having anything saved before tackling your debt aggressively. So let's say you've done a great job of not accumulating debt for the things you don't need, but what if your car breaks down? You need your car to get to work to make the money that will be paying off your debts, right? This is where having a small savings for emergencies or unexpected expenses can change your life. Imagine that if your car broke down and it would cost you about $500 to fix it, if you already had something saved, you can continue to pay off your debt and fix your car without having to use credit. Life would move on, business as usual. That is the ideal scenario. But on the other hand, if you were putting all of your extra funds to debt and you didn't have a savings in place, what option would you have for fixing your car? You would likely need to use a credit card, and that would totally kill the payoff progress you've already had, and it will make you feel terrible. No, thank you. Moral of the story, before tackling your debt head on, make sure you have a small savings in place. You may never need it, and I hope you don't, but if you do, at least you have it. Now you may be wondering, well, Rhea, what does a small savings actually mean? So I typically recommend 500 to 1,000. 500 if you have no kids or limited responsibilities or the likelihood of something going drastically wrong is small. And then 1,000 if you're a little bit more conservative or if you have kids and more responsibilities. 500 to 1,000 is usually a great starting point. Once you have that amount saved, then everything else can go towards debt. Now, I do recommend that you have this savings in a high yield savings account. So basically in an account that is not linked to your checking and that is earning interest. You shouldn't be touching this money unless you absolutely need it anyways, so you may as well get the most interest possible. Alrighty, next mistake to avoid when paying off debt. Using promotions to transfer balances only to rack up your debt again. Now, don't get me wrong, I have played the balance transfer game a couple of times in my life, and the right way to do it requires 2 parts. First, transfer high interest debt to the accounts that have the low or no interest promotions. Second, pay off the new debt before the promotion ends. Easy enough, right? Well, wrong. According to a study done by Dave Ramsey, 78% of people who consolidate debt rack it right back up. And I think this happens for a few reasons. First, I think it happens because people don't get to the root of what caused them to overspend in the first place, so they didn't really fix any problem. Therefore, they're back to their old spending behaviors, which is swiping credit cards, and it leaves them with even more debt. Another thing is, if you are doing a balance transfer, it's wise to take the full amount. So let's say you have a card that's accumulating interest and the balance is $5,000, and you can do a balance transfer to a $10,000 credit limit card. Taking that full $5,000 is beneficial. If that debt was $15,000 and you took $10,000 and now you have two debts, one for $5,000, one for $10,000, it's not as beneficial. So make sure that if you are doing a balance transfer, you are able to pull the full amount and transfer it to the zero balance card. Another thing to think about is when you transfer the balance from one card to another, you leave a card with the zero balance. That zero balance card makes you think that you're in a better position than you actually are, but it's not true. And if you feel good about that, you may be tempted to use that zero balance card. Now you have more debt than what you originally started with. So if you're going to use promotions as part of your debt repayment strategy, make sure that you hide the card that no longer has the balance. If you continue to use it, you will have more debt that needs to be paid down. Also, put yourself in a position to succeed. If knowing that you are accumulating interest every month is what motivates you to pay your debts off faster, then why even get a balance transfer promotion? The motivator is that you're paying interest. So if you take that interest away, you may lose your flame to pay that debt off. On the flip side, if balance transfers make things easier for you to manage and you can avoid using the debts with no balance, consider it. Just proceed with caution. And rounding out our list, final mistake to avoid when paying off debt, closing your accounts when the debt is paid off. As you move along in your debt repayment journey, you will pay credit accounts off. The balance will be zero and it will be amazing. Just don't jump the gun and close these accounts just because they're paid off. You may think, well, if they're closed, I can't spend them, which is true. However, since the average length of credit history accounts for 10% of your credit score, closing your accounts after they're paid off means those closed accounts are no longer generating history for you. So your credit score will take a hit. Instead, as I mentioned earlier, hide the cards so they can never be used. Freeze them. Give them to someone who can take them out of your sight. But closing the accounts may seem like the right thing to do. It will just negatively impact your score. And that's not the goal. We want your credit score to benefit from the debt payoff progress. So keeping your accounts open and at that zero balance mark is the best way to go. As I mentioned, I have been here a few times. Paying all of your debt off is no easy task. I know how hard it is. But hopefully now knowing the mistakes to avoid can help you make your journey just a little bit smoother. Best of luck. You got this. Thank you so much for tuning in to City Girl Savings today. I hope you feel empowered and inspired to master your money as you make your way to your dream life. Make sure you subscribe so you're the first to know when a new episode comes out. I truly value your thoughts and feedback, so please leave a review and let me know how this podcast has impacted you. Can't wait to chat soon and make it a great day.